Podcast is proudly powered by Battleborn Batteries. Let the power of lithium take you on your journeys across the outdoor world. Battleborn Batteries designs and assembles the industry's top choice for lithium-ion batteries right here in the USA. Reliable, safe, and long-lasting, Battleborn makes for the sustainable and lightweight drop-in replacement for traditional lead-acid batteries. Ready to make the switch to lithium and the switch to green energy? All batteries are in stock now. Shop today at battlebornbatteries.com.
Hey guys, product of the week here at the store is the new Hook jackets with Primaloft in them. Really lightweight jacket, but great little, you use it as a shell under your raincoat. Weighs nothing, will fold up to roll nothing. So give these a try, come by, check them out.
What is up, everybody? Good evening to you all. Welcome to Lines In Live, powered by Battleborn Batteries. I am your host, Justin Patrick, and with me, as always, is David Best, co-host, and in-house BP, Brandon Palmer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
From up north. We let him jump in on the video every once in a while, just kind of escape those cold days, and get back to fishing reality.
They're coming, David.
Yeah.
We all know how much you like to fish in the cold too, buddy.
No.
Yeah.
David loves it.
Yeah.
Hey, after that jacket, man, that's a slick looking jacket. That's supposed to be a pretty warm or cold weather jacket.
It is. Look, let me put it to you this way. I put that stupid thing on to make that video this afternoon, and all that wind and everything, and I was hot within about a minute. I'm like, I am done with this thing.
You kind of look like it. I mean, you were quick to take it off.
Yeah. It's very, very lightweight. I can see that being a really nice jacket to put under, if it's really cold out, to put under a raincoat. It's so lightweight, it's not going to be something that's going to feel bulky to you or anything like that. So it's a cool little jacket. You get a chance when you come in here, you need to try one of them.
Yeah. It looks slick. It looks like something you can wear to the office,
You could
get dinner in, then go fishing. So
yeah,
I'm going to give it a look. Guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. Everybody's starting to check in, and we're going to have a good discussion tonight. Something a little bit different than what we typically do here on the show. We don't always get into all the controversy and whatnot, but I feel like this is a topic that the voice needs to be heard by as many anglers that want to speak up about it as possible. And it's not necessarily a negative thing, but it's more or less, as we progress through the sport, we're still a young sport. We've grown a lot, but we're still young and we're still growing. We're still adapting, still making changes. And it's up to us as anglers, involved in this sport, involved in the tournaments, the Hobie Bassman Series, Bassmaster, KBF, whatever you fish. There's always room for improvement. And that's the intent of tonight's video, is to bring to light some of these controversial topics. And maybe controversial is not even the right word, but just some of these ideas, some of these topics that are being talked about right now. Some of the other podcasts out there have talked about them as well. So we're going to tune in tonight. I want to say thanks to our sponsors, Battleborn Batteries and Primary Tackle. Be sure to go and check out and support those people. And then I want to say thanks to old Brandon Palmer for jumping in with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you.
Absolutely. I want to throw one thing out there real quick. Our buddy Ashley Ott from W2Y, he has tried to get this going for the past 3 years, and it is finally going to happen. I want to call it like, kind of like a swap meet, but it's, we're going to get together on November 12th, correct, David?
Yep, November 12th, right here at the store. He'll be releasing some details. I think it's going to be a morning thing from like 10 to 1, something like that. Opportunity to bring out some baits, bring out some stuff, trade some stuff with other guys, rods, reels, whatever. It'd be an opportunity to see some other guys' kayaks. We're going to have it over in the little gravel side lot over here by the door. So it'll be kind of a fun thing. If the weather's a little inclement, I'm going to have some opportunities there to do some other things. As far as we'll have some tents, and we'll have I've got some areas of the kayak room and everything cleaned up where we can do some things. We're working real hard on a couple of projects as we get ready for Christmas here. So there'll be some opportunities there, even if it is inclement, to do some other things with it. So I got some ideas.
Cool. Yeah, great opportunity just to get come out and hang out with the other anglers and swap some baits around. Some of those baits have been sitting up that you're not using. Somebody else might use them. So if you're in the West Tennessee area, you want to come out and hang out and be a part of that, be on the lookout for those details. We'll drop some more details here on the show probably within the next couple of weeks. And Palmer is the owner of Little Miami Outfitters, and maybe I'm going to drop the bucket here, but you got anything that you want to talk about, Brandon? Something new coming from your amount of rods?
Yeah, been trying to get this this whole more jerkbait universal rod figured out. And I talked to you both about it, and when I saw David using it on top water too, I was like, wow, he just basically condensed like 4 rods that I had in mind into one. And I finally got them. They're almost here. I've got one of the I built one that's just like them. I showed it to Justin. It's from those blanks that I showed you, David. I think it was the 7. I cut it down to 6.9. It's got the 8-inch handle. And it's a medium light extra fast. Now the ones that I've got coming are medium, fast, and extra fast. Beautiful. Just like the bait casting. And they got the shorter handles on them. I hope they get more use. I'm sure they will, because the more I get to thinking about it, it's just like, man, it's going to be awesome to have just a couple rods do so many things. Yeah, pretty cool.
David, you're getting all cheesy over there.
I would have never even thought to get a shorter handle had I not seen what he was fishing with. I just it never even clicked. Like, oh yeah. And the way I saw him, that's going to sound weird, but working it, he wasn't even moving his upper torso. He just kept it in front of him. And that sold me.
Well,
go ahead, David.
Well, that shorter handle like that, it just makes for such a easier use of motion, and you don't have to work yourself to death. If when you are trying to work something, a longer handle, a conventional bass rod that bass boat guy uses gets in the way. I mean, there's a use for those in a kayak, but the reality of it is, for a lot of the baits that we like to use, a jerk bait, a topwater, a small spinner bait, a Ned rig.
Especially if you're wearing that bulkier life vest.
Right.
Man, it gets in your way.
So I'm anxious to get my hands on a couple of them.
Yeah. And I never even thought of this, but as you're fighting that fish, and how many times has that handle gotten caught on the chair, banged on something, got caught, and then it turns into the Chinese fire drill. And
whatever that is.
Chaos, man.
Chaos. Utter chaos. Yeah.
Chaos.
That is such as kayak fishing, though.
Yeah, very much.
Somebody posted a video earlier fighting some massive waves out on one of those California Delta lakes, and I mean, just coming up and just slamming down. Like, man, I feel for you, dude. I hate that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into this conversation. Kind of what's come to light, and this has been something, guys. As you all know, it's been talked about over the years, and we're really talking about different launches, should launches be regulated? And then also just how far away from the main body of water, it is really makes sense, for if you're going to call it I don't know, lake tournament, and you're 20 miles away from that lake. Are you even a part of that tournament anymore? I mean, now here's a disclaimer, guys. I want to put this out here before anything else is said. We are referencing some recent tournaments that have kind of brought all this to light again, or really just kind of got it in the spotlight. And by no means are we, here to bash on anybody, any organization, or any one individual. Russ Snyder's, Drew Gregory, these guys, they won these tournaments here lately, fair and square. It was the Pickwick tournament was, protested, and initially he was DQ'd, came back, and appealed it, won the appeal. So everything has been, all the checks and balances are there. These guys won legitimately. But, I've talked to both of you guys on the phone as well as some others, gotten a lot of different insight from some people. And I think that there's a commonality between most of what I've heard, in that, it's like, what can you really do? But, we're going to dive into possibly what could be done. So I want to first, I want to throw it over to you, David. We always lean on you for your experience, your history in the sport. You've been a part of the sport for a long time. Guys have been running all over the place. I mean, some of those tournaments down around, Texas and Louisiana, I mean, they'll run 2 states over,
Right.
If it's open, why not? Even around like Sturgeon Bay and some of those areas, they're running across major, embayments to get to the other side, some other river, and then going another 20 miles up some river, Red River's, I'm sorry, not the Red River. I can't remember the name of it. But there's a lot of examples out there. And Pickwick specifically, guys have been running up to Bay Springs. From your experience, I mean, what do you think? How do you think that should be structured in a kayak setting? Seeing as how, most of the time we have boundaries. The directors go in and they cut off the boundaries, say at a bridge or whatever they be. But in other organizations such as bass boat tournaments, they can run up to those areas and stuff like that. As we kind of like dial in the sport, there's 2 trains of thought, I guess, is, one, just kind of let it all open. And the other is there needs to be more regulation on, just how far we can go and this and that. What are your thoughts? How, does it need to be a little bit more open? Do we need to have more regulation? What's your thoughts?
So in my opinion, it has to be regulated. It has to be well defined. And I mean, look, I've been a manager of stores and sales territories, and it doesn't matter what in life you do. There has to be some very well thought out, very well defined boundaries in your relationships in life. There has to be those boundaries. I mean, and fishing is no different. I mean, look, as fishermen, we are going to bend whatever we can bend. I've seen guys do all kinds of crazy things, from pull up to weirs and throw over the top of a weir. They're still on the lake, the body of water is supposed to be on. Catch a fish on the opposite side, pull them up a weir. Is it legal? Is it not legal? Depends on the way you look at it. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll tell you a great example is Horseshoe Lake over in Arkansas. We had guys that used to fish these tournaments, and 5 Lakes is a private embankment inside of the Horseshoe Lake. And we had these little bridges and stuff that you could throw over. When braid was first invented, we had guys that would throw over the bridge, hook a fish, pull it to the bridge, swing it, pendulum swing it, and then jump it over the bridge. Legal.
By God, I'm winning this.
A fish going for a ride, but
yeah,
got him in the boat.
Wow.
Is it good for the fish? Hell no, but it is what it is. But yeah, guys are going to travel as far as they need to travel. They're going to do whatever they need to do. So if you don't have a very clear set of boundaries, I mean, I'll tell you a good example is what Hobie did at the Fox and the Wolf Rivers. Dude, they had that stuff so boundaried out, it was insane. I mean, you can go from here to here. You can't fish this lake, this lake, this lake, and this lake, but you are allowed to fish this lake and this lake. But make sure that you don't launch out of this boat ramp because this is private. You can't fish from here because this is this. I mean, and that's what you have to do. You have to be very, very particular in how you put this stuff together. If you are not, that opens it to where you can do the broad spectrum of things. I mean, you know, Arkansas River last year in Hobie, just so I can give you a good example and a bad example on the same trail. I mean, we had a guy, you know, that did really, really well, and he was going way down this logging trail and found this little spot way out in the middle of freaking nowhere that was a slough off of a slough off of a slough off the river. I mean, how is anybody ever going to find that without a little help? So,
Right.
I mean, you know, and this the example, one of the examples we're talking about is this Bassmaster event. We don't know exactly. I don't know exactly where he went because I didn't get to go. I haven't had time to look at this stuff. I'm freaking going crazy trying to get this store ready for Christmas. So, but I mean, you know, apparently it was 12 miles. Is that the number? About 12 miles off of the lake?
That's what they put out on the article. You know, I don't know. It wasn't, you know, very heavily defined just how exactly they got that 12-mile distance, whether they followed the creek or wherever he, you know, wherever he was at, or if it was just a straight shot, you know, from point A to point B.
Yeah.
But, you know, and that's the thing, you know, as we as anglers, you know, are tuning into this, and, you know, these guys that are, you know, these anglers that are winning, you know, are doing these crazy things, you know, maybe they're not crazy to them, but, you know, an example I was given to somebody earlier was, you know, somebody driving 15 hours to go fish Kentucky Lake, never been there before, you know, not familiar with the back roads, the backwater, and all this kind of stuff. You know, they don't, you know, they've got a couple of days, 2 or 3 days of practice. More than likely, you know, they're probably going to focus on the main lake.
Yep.
Unless, you know, where they're at from where they're at, you know, they just fish creeks, and they're like, oh, I see some creeks, I'm gonna go up those. But for the most part, you know, most people that come into an area to fish, like I said, a Kentucky Lake, they're probably going to be fishing either Kentucky or Barkley Lake, somewhere on that. I mean, we had the winner of the cast state championship on here, you know, last week, and he was referencing fishing on Barkley, you know, and he was, you know, talking about some current and this and that. You know, it sounded, of course, we don't have his waypoint, but it sounded like he was on Barkley. But when it comes down to these regulations, who does that fall on? You know, when if it's going to be detailed, like in the case of the Wolf and Fox River tournament, you know, they took the time, you know, Hobie, AJ, and them, they took the time to go in and mark those areas, you know, discover whether or not it was communicated to them, or they went in and they did the research themselves on the specific boat ramps, you know. But who does this fall on when we as anglers, we ask for more regulation, if that's what it boils down to? Does it fall on the, you know, tournament directors, or does it fall on the anglers themselves? I'm going to shoot that over to you, OBP.
You know what? Hats off to him. He did find a glitch in their system. I mean, as backwoods as that guy is, you know, you can't be mad at him for thinking about it. It's his style. Well, like you said, David, you know, Hobie has this, you know, 85-line paragraph about do's and don'ts. And I think everyone needs to mirror it, honestly, because even though I hate it, they don't have motors. I do hate it. But I mean, it keeps everyone honest. Right. It does keep everyone honest, you know, if you don't allow motors and then everyone takes off from that one spot. Because like me coming out of town, just like you said, I don't have any advantage at all, you know, because we're not in bass boats. We don't cover, you know, all that territory, you know, in one day. And to give someone, you know, if you can cut down the practices, you know, maybe 3 days, like make it a maximum instead of 2 weeks where you can, you know, it's just, they have, you know, the ability to do it. So they found the glitch, and, you know, hey, you can't be mad at him, but kudos to the guys that stepped up. That, you know, you guys are even from there. You don't even know where it's at.
Well,
we got a good idea.
So there's a lot of speculation. I mean, I don't want to speculate, where he was or anything like that. And we're, there's a couple of different scenarios here, that we're talking about, or just that have kind of brought this conversation to light. And both of them basically revolve around, anybody just tuning in that's not aware, both of them revolve around anglers accessing waters that are, miles away from the main body. Now here's my controversy with it. And kind of going back to the bass boat thing, I mean, you got John Cox running up creeks, miles and miles and miles, jumping log jams and beaver dams, whatever else he does. Mary Poppins over the top of them. But I mean, he's that, Keith Pochet, just a recent example on the Red River. I mean, he posted a video. He was legitimate. But this kind of stuff has been going on, like David said. People were going to find a way. And whether it's intentional, like, hey, here's the rules, let me find a gray area to operate in, or it's, hey, they didn't specify this. It's not necessarily a gray area. It's just that, these boundaries weren't specifically specified. And, if it's not in the wording, and I think that's maybe what happened with the Bassmaster situation, is that maybe there was a rule or a boundary that wasn't actually specified in the tournament rules release. And that's going to fall on Bassmaster, because that's an oversight on their part. I'm going to throw this out there. Last year, both you guys have heard me talk about this. Last year, they had the same event on Pickwick Lake. I don't know if it's the same time, can't remember. But I proposed the question of being able to run up to Bay Springs, because they did not have a boundary at Yellow Creek. Yellow Creek, those that are not aware, look up on Pickwick, but Yellow Creek is, the back of it is the start of the Tom Bigby Waterway, which runs about maybe 15 miles down, and your first impoundment is Bay Springs. Great fishery, big spots, big largemouth. But I proposed the question of being able to go up there and fish. Well, at the moment, the director, didn't even really know what I was talking about. How are you going to get there? You're going to pedal all the way up there? I'm like, no, man, you got ramps up there and this and that. Well, after that, it was cut off. The answer was no, you can't do that. And the boundaries was put in place right then and there. And then Yellow Creek, that was the boundary. In the case of other creeks, there are no other boundaries. Any kind of creek. I think there was one maybe closer down to Florence. But anyways, we could go on and on and on. But the question, the question in standing here is, who is going to be responsible for, kind of encapsulating all of that and saying, okay, we need to set, whatever it is. And David, you can tune in on, what do you think that we need to have more of like a radius, okay, here's a central point of the lake, 50 miles around there or whatever, but how do we go about doing that? I mean, because there's so many boundaries, there's so many little creeks, there's so many little sloughs, and it really varies depending on the lake.
Right. So I personally, that's the tournament director's job. So any failures there lie in one place and one place only. That is on the tournament director. Anytime that you're the person in charge of putting something together, it is your job to make sure that everything is well defined, well communicated, and well presented. My staff here at the store, if I don't give them good direction, guess what? We have failures. If there's a failure in this store, does it lie on my staff? No, it does not lie on my staff. It lies on me, because I did not do it correctly. I did not give them well communicated, well instructed instructions or whatever. So it's on the tournament director, and that's their job to define these pieces so that people don't have these misgivings or these issues as they look at things. Because what happens is, just like if my staff doesn't do what they're supposed to do, I now have a dissatisfied customer. Right. Guess what? We're their customer at the tournament director level. So if tournament director A didn't define the territory, and now whoever filed that protest, they're now his dissatisfied customer. They may not fish with them the next year. Yeah. So that's the way you have to look at it. And is it a defined radius? There's 100 ways you can do it. I'll use that Hobie Fox Wolf River one again. It was laid out. You could not launch above this highway. You could not launch west of this highway. You could not go south of this highway. It was just very well put together, and you could not going down this river or this creek. This is the last boat ramp that you can go to. Going down anything in between was good. If it was public, it was open. You could go, but they defined this is the last boat ramp on this creek. This is the last boat ramp on this river. This is the most northernmost boat ramp you can launch on this river, and you can't go above these lines or below these lines. And it was just well put together, and that's what they have to do. They have going forward. I mean, look, I talked to you about the KBF National last week. To me, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen, and I'm not bashing Chad at all, but that was the freaking most humongous body of water you could ever fish. There was hundreds upon hundreds of miles. You could fish from Clarksville, Tennessee, up to Cumberland, down to Dover on Barkley, and down to I-40 on Kentucky Lake. I mean, you could put 5,000 kayaks in there, and you couldn't be on top of each other.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. Maybe run across a couple here and there,
Maybe.
I mean, that is a massive amount of water to fish.
Yeah, and literally, I don't care. Everybody who fished that event, or not everybody, but a third of probably each the field across the board was fishing a different body of water. Period.
Yeah.
Because when you can fish 20 miles up the Duck River and 30 miles up the Cumberland, and I mean, those are two totally different bodies of water from Barkley, which is a totally different body of water from Kentucky Lake.
Might as well have just said, hey, the national championship is going to be held in the state of Tennessee. Go fish wherever you want.
Right. Exactly.
And we'll meet up back here for lunch, or dinner, whatever.
Yeah. As long as you're where you're supposed to get on time, you're good to go.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Do you think that this okay, so say technically this wasn't part of, this lake watershed boundary within the boundary of still being Pickwick. What do you do then if they're, like David just said, like this body of water isn't in the tournament? It's not named Pickwick Lake.
So all right, so Pickwick Lake. So we're just gonna go down and we're gonna say, okay, on Yellow Creek, Highway 25 is your final point that you can go past. On this creek, this is your final bridge that you can go past. On this creek, Cypress Creek, this is the final bridge you can go past. The main creeks that are navigable from point A to point B, you have a cutoff. It's not hard. If you've got a reasonable, and you couldn't have done that on the KBF thing because there would have been freaking 25,000 bridges that had to be listed.
Oh, well, once you open up the Duck River, I mean, that made it impossible.
But it's not, because you can say you're open on the Duck River to X point. Now, the problem is you got the Duck River, the Blood River, Big Sandy. There's a half a dozen other creeks up there that go way up into different boundary waters.
Yeah, I mean the Big Sandy runs all the way out to 40.
Yeah. So
I mean that's miles. I mean I don't know how far that's.
Yeah, and most folks consider there at West Sandy that's one cutoff, and whatever that highway is.
Well, I do think there is there's one. I don't think that you can really access that back portion of Big Sandy, but. And that's the thing. I mean, it's crazy when you see somebody that, and in my opinion, I think that Russ and them, they did an excellent job. They did the right thing, getting it on video. There's videos out there of him fishing. Jeff Little recorded video of them out there, even in practice and this and that. They're very clear on kind of what they were doing, how they came about fishing these areas, and the amount of time. I mean, they're They operated within the confines of the rules. They didn't do anything wrong. What we're talking about here is, moving forward, do we need to regulate this? Because when there's and I'm gonna reference the show last night. They did a really good job. It was a great conversation, and I believe it was Jay Wallen made the point that we're not, kayak fishing, it is what it is. And a lot of people got into kayak fishing for the beauty of being able to dump your boat off the side of a cliff and, and climb rappel down to it, whatever you want to do. We've seen craziness unfold in the sport. I mean, out of, Sam Rayburn, guys tossing boats over railings and stuff to get to access the water. I mean, in extreme situations, I get it. But that's kayak fishing, but this is tournament fishing, and there's a lot of money on the line. And to say, hey, this boundary is open, and I mean, I'm just going to say it what it is. Bassmaster has not invested into their kayak tournament organization like they need to. It's kind of like, hey, everybody else is doing this. Yeah, let's do it too. But then let's not really dump a lot into it. I mean, I don't even know if we have a true designated tournament director for Bassmaster right now. We have somebody that's, putting the tournaments together. But I mean, they're trying to harp on Steve Owens to do it because they don't have anybody. They don't have anybody in the kayak fishing industry that is adept with all the rules and how the sport has developed and what the anglers come to expect, and from the communication from the directors. They don't have that. So this hey, this creek is it's cut off here, but this one's not. I mean, that was a complete oversight because they're not putting in the time into it. And I'm just going to be I'm just speaking quite frank. It really just kind of shows with that one example.
Right. 100%. It's even more discouraging knowing that someone that lives, 7 hours from that place wants to come fish it, and already, just because of something like this, you've already been set back, and you're not even able to compete with things that left gaps, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's that's a part of the sport that is like that's gonna be really hard to dial in, and that's another conversation we'll get into here on practice days and stuff like that. But man, when you're talking about people that are not doing this for a living, that opens up a world of controversy in itself. I mean, you're going to have the handful of anglers that just this is what they do. They travel around, they fish terms. They're naturally going to have an advantage, automatically right off the jump. We as anglers, we know who we're going up against. We know their availability versus ours, and this and that. It is what it is at this point, but we can regulate it to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
So, David, when we talk about regulating, what's an idea? A thought that was tossed out there was having to launch from the bow ramps. And I want to be careful here because I don't think the intent here is to just make us just like bass boats, because that's not what we are. We do need some kind of leeway here on where we can launch. But what about the idea of anglers having to launch from the main body and then you can go up the creeks however far you want to go? Do you think that would discourage people from going 15, 12 miles up the creek?
No, and I'm gonna make a statement here, and y'all may or may not like it, but
I don't like it.
When I to me, you define the launch points, and if somebody wants to freaking travel 12 miles up the creek, it's not like we can't do it. I mean, I at Broken Bow, I pedaled 14 miles 2 days in a row. You can ask Justin. I was a tired freaking puppy at the end of the dang day. I don't mind pedaling. That's not the problem. But I just want to see it defined to where this is where you can launch from. This is the areas you can launch from. If you can find something outside of that, I don't have a problem with that piece. But in looking at what I was looking at, trying to figure out, okay, so let's say this guy was going to, at whatever we were talking about, let's say he was going to fish the area. I think he's probably fishing. Most of the boat ramps between the lake are the places that you would be able to launch between the lake and where he was, except for the one where I think he probably launched from, were closed. So had you defined it as, hey, this bridge 3 miles down from the boat ramp or 3 miles into the creek was the last place you could launch from, he would not have been able, he would have been able to get there. It just would have been like in a bass boat tournament. There are guys, and one of the places I fished a lot in the past was Slidell on the Pearl River down on the Gulf Coast. And there are guys that will leave from Slidell, go the Intercoastal Waterway, cross Lake Bourne, go in through a lock and go down into Delacroix, fish in those canals for 2 hours, go back, launch through, and come back.
Yeah.
And
that
8-hour fishing day, 6 hours driving a boat at 70 miles an hour to get there.
In that case, I will be the first to say, if somebody wants to pedal or paddle, motor, whatever, 12 miles up a creek and go and catch a limit of fish and then 12 miles back, and you can make it on and off the water within that, the time frame that you have to be, dude, my hat's off to you.
All for it.
No problem. What I think becomes the controversy is when you start going up these creeks looking for access points, this and that. You're kind of really getting some gray area on what's public and what's private. Now, I'm sure there's an application out there that is really up to date, day by day on private and public property. But if there is, then it needs to kind of be defined by the directors. I think, going back to your point, David, there needs to be more regulation. There needs to be a little bit more involvement from the directors to say like what's private, what's public, this and that. It just, for somebody that's, trying to go and dissect, like Dirk White saying 160,000 acre Kentucky lake. I mean, man, there's so much little oversight, and there's a lot of resources out there for directors to get involved in to say like, hey, what about this? Well, hey, I don't know, but let me call up Bill down the street. He probably knows, and find out, oh, yeah, that's a private launch. Guys were getting tickets and stuff like that at Kentucky Lake because, not everything is defined. I mean, most people are looking on Google Earth or Google Maps or whatever and, trying to find these little areas. I mean, how many bridges have we seen with tire tracks going down to it? Well, the road right there is public, but what about that little section of land right up underneath the bridge? Who owns that? Who owns the land an acre to the left or to the right? Man, you start getting into those little areas. That's when I think it, raises an eyebrow for a lot of people. Like, hey, how do we know for sure this is even private or public? We're just taking their word for it. And none of this is, none of this is bashing or anything like that. It's just, when we talk about the growth of the sport, man, somebody coming in like, dude, some of these people are probably already like, man, there ain't no way I'm coming back and fishing the national championship again, driving 15, 20 hours or however long, paying $300 when these dudes have been here for 2 weeks, half a month. They're dialed in, before they even left the house,
Right.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
All that money and expenses that you spent getting there, and all these tournaments, they're not cheap. I mean, I was doing the math earlier, and I think just this year alone on coming down there with you guys, and doing the worst Texas trip of my life, first and last.
I think we're here for all of us.
It snowed, man. Come on.
Can't be your last, man. It's Lake Fork.
I know it's not. I'm actually going down there next month, but it was like just around $6,000 for total expenses: tournaments, gas, room, and food.
Yeah.
I mean, something's got to, make it uniform. That's what would make me feel better about all of it.
Chuck Smith has got a good point, or he's got an idea. Define boundaries, yes, but limited ramp access, no. So I'm assuming, you can put in wherever you want, but just within those boundaries. And I mean, I think that probably is likely what you'll see. They're not going to say, hey, you have to launch from the main lake, and go up the streets. I highly doubt that, because then that really takes that takes, the kayak out of kayak fishing, at that point. Although that would solve it, but it's not going to be very, very light. So on the topic of practice time and stuff like that, Hobie was the first one. Or was it Hobie or was it Bassmaster to step up and actually put, or did they both do it? Do you know, Palmer, to put a regulation on practice days?
I don't know.
I believe it was Bassmaster.
I think it was Bassmaster, honestly. I want to say it was.
Yeah. So they have it where, I think it's like a couple of weeks or a month. And that's the other part. There's so many different rules for every organization. I'm sitting here. I've been doing this for 7 years, and I can't remember all the different rules. But every single entity has their own different individual rules, and that's what makes it complicated. I know, and every time that you talk, anytime that anything like this is going to be brought up in any kind of sport, whether you're talking about Little League baseball or Major League Baseball, things are going to be different, and you can't, a little leaguer can't expect to, abide by the same rules and this and that. Major leaguers are all the time.
Right.
There's going to be differences. MLF, Bass Elite Series, they're different. There's different rulings and this and that. But I do think that within kayak fishing, there could be some uniform, rules that can be adopted by all of the series to say, hey, look, we need to simplify this. And I think that that everybody's only going to benefit from it. Maybe I'm wrong. Palmer, what's your thoughts?
You're not wrong at all. I mean, and honestly, it would make everyone feel a lot better that there was nothing on the back end to worry about, that there was an in that they didn't know about or an out that, everyone's looking for that niche. Yes. But I think everyone needs to be searching for the same type of, niche, because once you start, like even judging fish, they're not even the same with, they're all different. So, and I've even asked you that. I'm like, dude, I didn't know you could pinch a tail. Oh yeah, Hobie lets you pinch a tail. I did one up at St. Clair. Nope. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, and within Bass and Bassmaster series, you can't pinch the tail, but in Bass Nation you can.
Really?
That's confusing. I had it's just all over the place.
Yeah, stuff like that is that's annoying. Like,
David,
stop.
In the basketball world, do you see that a lot? Where you have like a club tournament, or BFL, and different from the elites and stuff like that.
Yeah, you see that. And that's kind of an organizational thing. Everybody presents their own rules or different rules. Some people allow this, some people don't allow this. And again, it falls on the tournament director to define the rules, present the rules to the group, and say, this is the way it works, and then to enforce those rules. And that's kind of where it has to go, and they have to do a better job of saying, this is the way it is. Now, if it's an open free-for-all, just say it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the guys that are going to drive 7 or 8 hours to go to it have the ability to say, you know what, I'm not dealing with an open free-for-all. I'm going to save my money and go do this other event that makes more sense, that at least I know I have a fair playing field.
All right. Exactly.
So, and I'm not saying that Bassmaster was not a fair playing field. I'm just saying it just, there needs to be some definition to the way you put together the tournament rules. BFLs, bass boat tournaments, a lot of the bigger ones, they define it. Hey, you can fish from this point to this point. Wherever you can get your bass boat to is legal, da-da-da. With kayaks, it's a little harder to define that. So you have to be more specific, because I can get a kayak a heck of a lot more places than I could ever get my 21-foot Ranger. So, you've got to be well defined, and you've got to say, this highway, and it's easy. You could take Highway 100 on the north side of freaking Pickwick, and you can take Highway 72 on the south side of Pickwick, and say that's the cutoffs. That's easy.
Yeah. A place like Pickwick is really easy, and there's only a handful of tributaries and creeks and stuff like that come into Pickwick.
But they still missed it.
So
they missed it.
So
the biggest one, or one of the biggest.
So is it the tournament director? I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Was it the same one that was out at the fork with us? Correct? No, is it something to where he may have just not have been? Oh, it wasn't.
Well, don't quote me. I want to say there was a change of management. I think that guy Patrick. I think he left.
Oh,
yeah,
now
I think
here's one thing. How well how well should that tournament director know that body of water? Does he have to be from there? Should he? Just stare at a map nonstop and come up with his own boundaries?
No,
because
think
he
it's
missed
really
one.
simple. I think it's really simple. The tournament director who's over it, we have tons of resources for guys around in every body of water. You make 3 phone calls and you consult 2 or 3 different guys and say, okay, we're having a tournament on this particular body of water. What is a reasonable set of boundaries on this side, that side? How should we define it? I know that's what AJ did, because there's no way AJ could have defined what he defined at the Fox and Wolf Rivers.
Right. Right.
And I know that's what he did. I talked to him about it. But that's the way you have to do it. You have to you go to that local resource and say, all right, we want to have a really upstanding event. What are the areas that we need to define that where guys can go catch some fish and they can go look for whatever body of water they want to go to? And how can my creek guys get to go fish a creek? How can my lake guys get to go fish a lake? How can my guys who like to fish shallow or deep or whatever get to do what it is that they do well? Because that's how you get really good tournaments, is when you have the ability for guys to be doing several different things that are in their strength zone. Right. And that's the important piece, is everybody needs to be able to fish their own strengths.
And I would add to that it makes it, it makes it interesting, when you're fishing like a lake you follow or something like that. And there's a ton of backwater up the river and stuff like that, and it helps you to grow as an angler too, and help to understand, somebody new. I mean, that's the thing about most tournament organizations is, outside of the ones you have to qualify for, most anybody can jump in on, so, somebody coming in that is maybe new, either maybe using tournaments as kind of a fast track to their angling experience. I mean, I've always equated it to this, like, and I liked, when we had Marshall on the podcast, he made a great example. If you want to get better, there's a couple of different options out there. And I really like the idea of, if you want to get better, go start fishing tournaments, because you're going to learn what you did wrong. Versus when you go and fish by yourself and you don't catch them, then you have nothing to reference. Right. Unless David's up on the other side of the lake, fishing, whatever. But, so when you learn about, well, so-and-so was way up, this creek fishing, and catching smallmouth or whatever, it's like, oh man, you put that in memory bank, and, next time, maybe you start investing a little bit more time into fishing creeks that time of year, or whatever the case may be. So it makes it interesting. The next time y'all are there for a tournament, then it's going to, maybe it's not a blowout, where one person pulls away by 20 inches or something like that, And that's and let's just be realistic here. I think a lot of kayak anglers that are fishing tournaments are probably either new to fishing, or new to tournament fishing. This is kind of like it is a very user-friendly way of getting involved into tournament fishing, where you're not, out of pocket as much as you would be in a bass boat.
Right. True.
So, to say that there's a single answer, I don't know. There's a lot of growth, but I do think, like you're saying, David, it's got to fall on the directors. I hate to make it sound like, hey, they're doing a bad job, because they're not. I mean, these guys, these directors are doing a phenomenal job, and to not sound like we're bashing on Bassmaster, because they're new to this, so an oversight on a creek or this or that, hey, that's one deal. But when it comes down to it, Palmer, like you asked, do they need to sit in front of a screen and stuff like that? Either use your references or sit in front of that screen and do what you got to do, because, these people, whoever it may be, are paying money, and when you're talking about up to $10,000 payout, that's a lot of money on the line, man. Yeah. It needs to be nailed down.
It's an easy fix to gain trust amongst a whole lot of money that you can potentially have. Trust. It's an easy fix. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be quick, but it's easy, I think, for Bassmaster. KBF, good luck.
Well, they just, any way the wind blows that's
good luck, man. Hey, you got the Mississippi River tournament coming up. You can fish the whole thing, David.
Yeah.
Where are you fishing?
Countrywide Mississippi River tournament.
Oh,
Get her done.
So, and there's a lot of backwaters off of that daggum river.
Look at the comments. Let's see. Too many people jumping in. It's Far Wide app is pretty good for showing public and private land. David, it will show that private and public?
It will. It shows private and public. Again, though, it's not fail-proof.
Yeah. Can you trust it? Back to the word trust. Can you trust it? If
there you go. And we got to be in that circle.
Property lines change daily.
Right. Somebody could come over and buy 60 acres that buttons up next to said creek or runs or encapsulates part of said creek the day before the tournament. Somebody signs the papers on it. Maybe, it was private or public. I don't know. But yeah.
All right.
And that falls into a whole other piece as to, we've already beat this horse, but what is a public ramp and what is a private ramp?
Yeah.
And I think
that's another thing, man. What defines a ramp? I mean, what defines public access? I mean, when we're down at what's that? Oh, Lake Seminole. I mean, I gotta be honest. Maybe I just, in my mind, most of the time I'm looking for public accesses,
right.
Maybe like ramps, I haul a trailer. I've got a big Hobie PA-14. It's a big boat. I'm not dragging that daggum thing through a cornfield,
Right.
I don't want to. If it boiled down to it, I would, but that's a heavy load. But that's just me. But I'm driving through, going to check in, and dude, there are trucks everywhere, just all on the side of the road, dumping their boats into these little backwaters that are connected to the main lake by like that much of water.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, man, did a rule change or something? Because who owns all this land?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's it. I mean, and that's the part that's kind of wild to me. In the kayak side, from the bass boat side, it's very well defined. It's easy because you opt for one boat ramp. It's your thing. From the kayak side, it is so open that's the part that drives me a little nuts. In that, how do you define a public access? I mean, I at Rayburn, this is a good example.
There you go.
I fished an access at Rayburn that had I drove into there without Far Wide saying this is public, I probably wouldn't have fished it. Yeah. I told you about it. I mean, it's in the middle of a dead-gum neighborhood. There was no sign that said private. But to me, it looked about as private as you could freaking get.
Yeah.
So on the app, it said public?
But it said public access on the app. So as far as I was concerned, that Far Wide was the sponsor that year. So if it said public, I'm there. So, and me and there was another angler there that he looked at me. He goes, look, my uncle lives right down the road. He tells me this is questionable. And I'm like, Far Wide says it's public. He goes, and there's no signs that say it's not. And I'm like, I'm good to go as far as I'm concerned.
Wait, did you just tell on yourself, David?
No.
It's questionable.
This
is probably wrong, but we're going to
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That you never really know. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, how do we define those?
Well, in that example that you just gave, same thing at Seminole. Billy and Cody are driving down the road. They see Joe over here. And Joe, he's breaking the rules, but doesn't know it. Yeah, he's dumped his boat in on the side road. So Billy and Cody, they're like, "Oh hell yeah, I'm gonna dump in there." And then behind him are Susie and Janet. They dump in because they're like, "Oh man, all these people are doing over here. Like, yeah, that looks good. Let's go." And then all of a sudden, now you got a train of people that are just following the leader. Yeah. And then before you know it, you got however many anglers that may or may not be breaking the daggone rules.
Yeah.
And then, what is the organization going to do? You know, I mean, if Far Wide app, the title sponsor of the season says, you know, that their app says it's public, and then Fred comes out with a shotgun, you know, when you get back to the ramp, he's like, what are you doing here? You know?
Yeah.
Well, Far Wide said it's public.
Yeah. Well, and legally, in most states, as long as there's nothing there that says it's private, it is public.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I know a lot of the land around these lakes, you know, is owned by Corps of Engineers and stuff like that, you know, for the most part. But you know, you do have there is a lot of private land. I mean, you know, like Smith Lake, there ain't a public land around that lake, you know.
That's all private.
It's laced with private property everywhere. But I mean, a lot of Pickwick, you know, there's, you know. So, you know, it's, I really like the word you used, trust, Brandon. I think when it boils down to it, people want to feel like they can trust the system, trust the people that are running these, you know, these tournaments, and trust that, you know, they can come out, you know, they can travel 20 hours and pay their money and do their time and have a legitimate chance at winning, you know, versus feeling like, man, you know, I didn't even know that water was in play, and they're nowhere even near Kentucky Lake, you know.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we have liked to in this industry, you know, and it's correct, it's politically correct to say it's angler responsibility, you know. But also I think that's kind of a blanket cover-up answer just to say angler responsibility, you know. I do think that there needs to be, like David said, some more responsibility on the directors to go in and determine, because this sport, this type of fishing is unlike any other fishing that the world has ever really been used to. Like you said, David, bass boat tournaments, they're putting it at one ramp. There's no question. They're going to be on the water. They're not loading up and going somewhere else. We move from ramp to ramp throughout the day. We're looking for all these little niche areas and stuff like that. I think that if you can eliminate that gray area, eliminate that question, and, you know, eliminate that question of trust in the system, man, you know, the sports are going to continue to grow, continue to evolve, and people are going to continue enjoying it. But, you know, we're going to get there.
We will. We'll do it.
We'll do it. We'll rally together. Any other thoughts, guys? I mean, you know, we could go on, and you know, I was, you know, I was hoping to have one other person on here to kind of get their perspective and stuff as well, just kind of keep the conversation going on about it, some different ideas. But you know, we've covered a lot, and you know, it's really good stuff. But and I do want to, you know, end this by saying, man, you know, this sport is not, you know, this sport is in a good spot. You know, there's a lot of positive what's going on, and again, you know, these anglers, they didn't break any rules. It was all defined that they were within the confines of the rules. They won legitimately, but it's just, you know, and I think as human beings, our tendency when we witness something that's just way outside of what we thought of, then we automatically want to jump at it and be like, whoa, you know, this is crazy. You know, is that even, you know, but I don't think that's what we're doing here. I think in these situations, it has, you know, made some people throw their hands up and been like, you know, whoa. But at the same time, these kind of these topics have been circulating through this, you know, through the industry for years. Yeah. Particularly the idea of practice days and stuff like that.
Right. And I mean, if anything, if it was me, I would just piggyback off of Hobie. Like I would literally cut and paste everything AJ had written, typed out in the description of the rules, and plastered it all over mine, because he gets it done, man. I can't stress enough how awesome and smooth Hobie runs, and it's just nice to be a part of it. You don't have to worry about, oh, your check's in the mail. You'll get it, or something like that, or just like, oh, you know, there's a gray area for someone missed a spot that some guy fished 28 miles away that caught 5-pound spots. Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I will say, you know, these conversations, you know, they already are going to make an impact. You know, we're going to see some changes, I think, next year, whether it's on a lake by lake basis or a generalized rules adjustments. But I mean, KBF Chad's already on live right now, doing a live show talking about changes coming for next year. So, this is what we have to do as anglers, people involved in sport. Our voices need to be heard. That's a big part of this platform that we can use to have our voices heard, and, speak our mind. So, I'm really excited for 2023. I think, that we're only going to get better. I think I'm with you, Brandon. I hope he's got a good deal, but maybe just need to change that one ruling from no motors allowed to motors allowed.
I'm happy with the no motors allowed thing.
David, you just haven't put one on your boat yet. You just need to put one on your boat, and you'll be like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's a whole other freaking conversation. We can do that on another night.
Yeah. That NK on yours, the NK or the Torpedo would not affect.
I could put the NK on mine in 30 freaking seconds. It's easy peasy.
Yeah.
But it defeats the
twice
whole
as
purpose
fast.
of why I'm in a kayak.
We'll convince him someday. It's going to happen, David. Yeah, we will.
No, you won't. Hey, did I have any trouble going to Coder Island with you?
Yeah, man, I kept having to wait for you. What are you talking about? No, I'll give him that. He was in the wind too.
I stayed right up with him. He'd slow down every once in a while for me for just a minute.
And then you asked me to tell you, and I said, "No, David, we can't be doing that out here, dude. You're peddling, right?" You didn't ask me to tell you, dude. Did you ask me to tell you?
No, I did not ask you. No, because the whole point of pedaling is so I'm in better shape.
I thought that was the point of going to the gym.
That too.
Because you don't get to fish that often, David.
I don't get to fish that often. I got to go to the gym to keep up.
I used to think the same thing. I was like, yeah, I love pedaling because it keeps me in shape. And then I'm like, wait, I only go once a week.
Justin loves motors so much. You got two now.
I got two.
One in the front, one in the back.
Yeah.
I like it.
And when he has to go to a Hobie event, he is a tired puppy.
Me too, man. I ain't gonna lie.
Justin
you got spot lock and rear lock now, don't you?
Whatever you want to call it. You can only use one at a time. They're tools, man. They both serve different purposes.
For now, and there's the slippery slope right there.
What?
For now, you can only use one at a time.
Oh yeah, you will not see me unless they come out with a Pro Angler XL or something like that. You won't see me with two motors on the boat. That's a little ridiculous. So I hate having rod stand up behind me.
They'll be bringing the PA-17 back, and Justin will have a big NK on the back or a Torpedo on the back, and have his spot lock on the front, and it'll look like a little mini bass boat.
Walk around with holding my back, trying to get it up on the ramp.
Business in the front, party in the rear, fellas. Right here.
Wrong. Why did they get rid of the PA-17? Nobody bought
it. I just don't think they sold enough of them.
I may want to try and get my hands on one day.
Wasn't it a two-seater?
Yeah.
It is actually, it's designed as a two-seater, but it does have a space to put a third. It was designed to actually be a guide boat for tournament or for trout guys.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a massive boat, dude.
It is a beast.
I mean, you'd have to have a full bass boat trailer to haul that thing around.
Yeah.
So you're not portaging with that? Full heavy?
Look, I've had to unload 3 of them damn things off of trucks. I'd never want to see another one in my lifetime.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. All right. Well, any other closing thoughts, guys, before we wrap this up?
Covered it, man.
Come see us. Christmas is coming.
Well, winter is coming. I know.
Fast.
S.Y. Wilson and Primary Tackle in Arlington, Tennessee. Go and see David. Go and check out Little Miami Proteus Rods, LittleMiamiOutfitters.com.
Yes, sir.
And guys, we're going to end it with that. Thank you all for tuning in tonight, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Later, guys. See ya.